Welcome to the Kentucky Bourbon Traveler. Today we're going to go to Bardstown, Kentucky and visit Heaven Hill's Distillery. We're going to profile Heaven Hill's 6-year old style bourbon. And we're going to have a recipe for bourbon mango sauce on pork chops. Hi, thanks for joining us. If you haven't been here before, I'm Ken, and welcome back to Louisville, Kentucky. We're very excited to be having a drawing to send a subscriber a free traveler hat like this one. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and we'll be drawing a name every so often, and we'll be sending out free hats like this one after emailing people to ask what address we should send it to. If your subscriptions are set to private, just send us an email. We'll enter you just the same to get a free hat too. Special thanks to Rhonda at Derby City Embroidery in Louisville for the great shirts and hat logo work. Today we're heading back to Bardstown, Kentucky, where the Bourbon Fest was held last episode. Bardstown's a very small town in the middle of the forest, which has a very interesting habit of being in the middle of history. Bardstown's jail, you can see here, was the oldest operating facility in Kentucky till 1987. If you did a minor crime, you could end up with your head and your hands in this stock. Shoot, those people look familiar. Probably picked up on a bourbon-related charge. The Union and Confederate armies also fought through Bardstown repeatedly, back and forth during the Civil War. The Southern bank robber you might have heard of, Jesse James, visited relatives here often and escaped through the limestone caves under town. Gangsters including Al Capone, who had a hotel suite, by the way, here in Louisville, Louisville's best hotel, I should mention, with a secret tunnel, was rumored to have visited for access to bootleg liquor during Prohibition. Bardstown also has the Heaven Hill Bourbon Heritage Center. Heaven Hill is the largest family-owned and operated distillery in the U.S. It is best known for Evan Williams bourbon. Heaven Hill Distillery began just after Prohibition in 1935 by the Shapiro family, and the master distiller was one of Jim Beam's cousins, Joseph Beam, who married into the family. Joseph Beam's family were the master distillers at Heaven Hill for many years, with the late Parker Beam and his son Craig ending the dynasty a few years back. You may be surprised that Heaven Hill holds and ships more bourbon than almost any other company in the world. This family-owned distillery keeps a very low profile. Advertising, news is surprisingly rare. Speaking of news, their master distiller is changing here shortly. Denny Parter will be working for the Maker's Mark Beam Suntory facility. The Heaven Hill Bourbon Heritage Center site has a beautiful visitor center. This is a pot still, which in the past was used by small distillers to make whiskey. The Bourbon Heritage Center tour shows you one of their 1970s barrel aging rickhouses too. Here you get an idea just how dark these barrel storage rickhouses are to work in. Although they have over 50 rickhouses like this, Heaven Hill is in the process of adding 25% more rickhouses to move up its capacity to age and store barrels. Many of the distilleries here in Kentucky did not plan on bourbon demand being so high and are short of bourbon for specific labels. Some even having to be discontinued, like Bottled and Bond this last week. Today we're profiling Heaven Hill 6-year old style bourbon, 90 proof. It's one of the best unknown cheap bourbons you probably never heard of outside of Kentucky. This is not a well-known super premium bourbon. Matter of fact, it's less than $15 here in Kentucky, and on the lower shelf, generally brands, and it stays in obscurity, although it's known in bourbon circles as the best kept secret I've seen. Many prominent connoisseurs have reviewed this brand, and I get a kick out of the really high marks it gets in blind tastings. This 6-year bourbon is not the thinnest I've ever seen. It has vanilla and caramel highlights, very subtle spice, and it's surprisingly oaky for the age of the bourbon. It tastes more mature than it is, and the hint of butterscotch mimics much more expensive offerings. Heaven Hill Old Style Bourbon shares most of the characteristics of its recently discontinued brother, Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond, which was 6-year but 100 proof and has just 5% less alcohol, making up the 10% difference between the Heaven Hill Bottled in Bond and the Old Style Bourbon. This was discontinued this month, and the shelves were cleaned out of this Bottled in Bond in hours here in Kentucky. Heaven Hill's Old Style Bourbon has grain ingredients that are said to be Heaven Hill's standard rye mash bill of about 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. The barrels are burned or charred prior to filling to 3 to 4 barrel char, which you can see on the 2 right staves on this chart. Next, Christiane is cooking dinner with bourbon. Stick around for a quick gourmet bourbon mango sauce on pork chops recipe.
Hello everyone, I'm Christiane from Würzburg, Germany, and today we're going to make a bourbon mango marinade and sauce with pork chops. And the ingredients are brown sugar, mustard and soy sauce, and then I took salt, pepper, paprika, and ginger, and just pour all of that in a bowl together. Now I will stir the brown sugar, and then on top I buy these little cups of mangoes, and they already have some juice in it. I pour just a tiny little bit of juice out and pour that over my other ingredients. Then you stir it real well, and then of course the best of the best, 3 tablespoons of bourbon of your choice. Or a little bit more. So we stir this ever around, then you can take your pork chops and you put them in a bowl, and you set your pork chops in the marinade and you put it in the refrigerator for about an hour. So after we marinated the pork chops in our beautiful marinade, I'm gonna took the pork chops out, and now I'm gonna pour the marinade into a pan. Scrape it out real good, and then you have to take a whisk and you will stir the sauce on the medium heat, probably around 5 or 6. And on the medium heat you constantly stir the sauce so it kind of starts to thicken, and it usually takes 7 to 10 minutes. Getting ready to fry our pork chops up in a nice preheated pan with olive oil, and take our wonderful marinated pork chops and start frying them up. Pork chop, we poured the wonderful bourbon mango marinade and glaze over the pork chop, and I presented it with an acorn squash, and you can find the recipe on the end. And now enjoy.
Kentucky Bourbon Traveler is proud to be a member of the Stave and Thief Society Bourbon Certification Program. Last year, the Kentucky Distillers Association announced the official bourbon education program, the Stave and Thief Society. It's the official bourbon education course endorsed by master distillers and 33 distillers in Kentucky. If you'd enjoy getting your bourbon certificate online, even in Europe and Canada, contact Kristen Head at 502-266-7377 or go online, registrar@staveandthief.com.